Architecture is all about lines. Whether it's a house, skyscraper, or bridge, most structures are composed of vertical lines in the form of columns, posts, towers, and walls, and horizontal lines in the form of beams, floors, foundations, and roofs. Throw in a few curved lines like arches and circles, and you have the basic components to design almost anything. No golf architect was better than Pete Dye at taking classic elements of structural architecture and incorporating them into course design. Most course architects try to replicate the soft, irregular, and random shapes found in nature. But many of Dye's best courses are composed of strong horizontal and vertical forms, none more so than the Players Stadium course at TPC Sawgrass, home of the Players Championship since 1982. The 18th hole in particular, a beast of a par 4 running along a lake, is all about lines and form, both aesthetic and strategic. Hello, I'm Duncan, the architecture editor at GolfDigest, and today we're going to take a closer look at Pete Dye's 18th hole at the stadium course at TPC Sawgrass in Ponte Vedra, Florida. The 18th is a par 4 that stretches 462 yards from the tournament tees. Most amateurs play between 370 and 400 yards. It curves gently to the left along a lake that separates it from the 9th hole. The green is tucked tight against the water, so any drive or approach shot, even mildly left, is going to splash or bounce into the water. There are just 2 bunkers on the hole, both greenside, and neither is really in play. The small pop bunker is 8 yards short right of the green, and the other is a low trench bunker that wraps around the back left of the green and really only catches shots that come in too hot. The green is deep, but it's not a big target, just over 6,000 square feet. It flows right to left off the mounds toward the lake, with 3 hole locations on this upper shelf that defines the back half of the green, and a 4th pin location in a lower bowl at the front left against the water. Bailing out to the right on this hole is also not a good option. Trees and pine straw line the outside of the fairway, and balls that find themselves short right of the green leave pitch shots out of deep hollows, moguls, and rough with unlevel lies back toward a green that races away toward the lake. One of the things that distinguishes Pete Dye's designs is that there's rarely any ambiguity about the quality of a shot. There are no shades of gray. This is because of the way he built hazards, with sharp edges and vertical faces that made them incredibly unforgiving. Balls rarely just hang up on the banks or almost go into the water. Playing his courses delivers a sense of finality. The result is either something safe or something sunk. That's especially true of the 18th. In this case, the bulkheading along the lake, which is vertical cypress planking secured by horizontal banding, forms a short wall between land and water. It's a 90 degrees razor's edge that cleanly separates good shots from the bad. Dye had been lining lakes and bunkers with wooden bulkheads for years, notably at Crooked Stick and Harbor Town. But the bulkheading is an important visual and architectural component of what Dye was trying to achieve at TPC Sawgrass, which opened in 1981. It's part of the reason why the course appears so detailed and visually ornate. Dye stacked layer upon layer of horizontal lines, breaking them up with bulkheads, bunkers, and upright grass facings. For example, here's the par 5 11th when it was just being constructed. It's perhaps the best example of how Dye incorporated lines, planes, and color into the architecture to create visual and strategic engagement, and some would say intimidation. For example, here's a view from the fairway. The base horizontal layer of what golfers see on the approach to the green is the water, this flat and expansive plane that forms the foundation of the hole, that can also reflect what's happening above it from certain vantage points. This surface plane is broken by the bulkheaded wall that supports the land. As you can see, a strong line forms where the wooden planks meet the water. Another horizontal is created where the top of the bulkheading meets the first plane of land, in this case the wide waste bunker that fronts and wraps around the right side of the green. The horizontal plane of white sand with its green grass border then transitions into the second vertical element, the high grass shoulder leading up to the green that follows the line of the sand and bulkheading. Atop this is another plane, the putting surface, mimicking the same general shape. Then beyond the plane of the putting surface, though well behind it, is another staggered horizontal, the top edge of the mounds beyond the green, which along with the horizon of trees, can add a final element of vertical height. In one hole, Dye has introduced a series of horizontal lines and planes that draw the eye along them left and right, broadening out before your vision ascends to the next level, and then the next, each terrace moving farther back. It's unclear if Dye had structural architecture in mind when building the TPC, something like the horizontal facades of Frank Lloyd Wright, But both designers were attempting to accomplish the same thing, to move your eye in very specific directions to control your experience with the whole structure. Professional golfers work best when they can block out everything else and focus on particular targets. Aim small, miss small is one way to think about it. And Dye was trying to make it difficult for them to do that. His horizontal and vertical lines were meant to widen their perspective to create doubt and uncertainty. The 18th hole contains less horizontal layering than the 11th, but the simplified lines are longer, stronger, and just as effective in diffusing the player's ability to focus on a single target. The lines force the eye to acknowledge the totality of the long curve of the water. Early on, the bulkheading wasn't the only vertical element of the hole. That long line would guide your eye down the hole to the next line, the upright stadium seating around the green. The stadium seating served two purposes. One is the most obvious. It provided fans with clear views of the action at the Players' Championship, with the most formal seating at holes 18, 17, and around the first tee. The concept of using land elevations to enhance visibility wasn't new in 1981, but the specialized creation of actual grass steps and benches where people could sit as if they were in chairs was novel. The second purpose was more practical. Sawgrass was literally built in a swamp. Dye and his crews had to drain it first, then raise it out of the bayou by finding enough solid land to build the golf holes. What they needed most was sand, but all the topsoil on the 415-acre Ponte Vedra site was dark muck that went down 6 to 10 feet. It was unusable for golf. However, when they drilled down beneath it, they discovered, in several locations, deep veins and pockets of sand. So the crews had to dig down and remove the muck by the truckload, take it out, then harvest the sand underneath it to cap all the golf holes, using it to shape the dips and mounds that define the design style of the TPC. These sand mines, which is essentially what they were, became the lakes that the holes now play around and over. Dye's crews just kept digging and digging until they extracted all of the sand that they could find, and when they were finished, they filled up the holes with water. So, the lake on 18 is the size it is today, not because it was planned, but because the edges are where they stopped mining when there was no more sand left. Dye needed to do something with all of the mud and muck they dug up and trucked out of the area on 18. Dean Beeman had the original idea of giving spectators elevated views of the holes. But Dye took the idea to the next level and piled the muck up high around the greens, much higher than was ever envisioned, shaping and grassing actual ledges to sit on. But the most important line of all at the 18th is the one that confronts the golfer on the drive, the long curve of the bulkhead along the lake that stares them straight in the face. This strong, gradual arc is both strategically and compositionally important. It was a Pete Dye specialty. Those who worked with him and his sons, Perry and PB, came to call it the design line. The use of it at the 18th at TPC had major implications as the final hole of the round or the 72nd hole of each Players' Championship. The unique orientation of the design line, slightly offset from the tee, makes it impossible not to think about the water as the eye follows the slow curve of land all the way to the green in the distance. The line sets up a strategically uncomfortable tee shot because it presents neither a straight fairway target nor a clear diagonal target. The subtly skewed angle of the lake falls awkwardly in between. The hole bends left, but it's not a conventional dogleg. If it were, there'd be room for error, even if you failed to cut the corner. It's also not a diagonal tee shot, like that of another TPC 18th hole, the TPC Scottsdale, where players are hitting more over the water on the drive. At Sawgrass, the design line means players are starting their drives right along or just inside the wall of the lake. Carry distance is not really a factor since there's nothing to cut across, but shot shape and commitment control are, two skills that are likely to be in short reserve at the end of a round or tournament at the TPC. Most players try to shape a right-to-left shot down the center of the fairway and hope it turns over, and many will club down to a 3-wood or driving iron for better control. If the drive does turn over, they'll have a wide-open look at a green from the left side of the fairway. The oaks on the far side of the fairway will block out any shots that get into the pine straw, which was brought out to the edge of the fairway in 2018. From under the tree limbs, only the foolish or most desperate will try to punch a low-cut shot toward the water to try to get near the green. Since 2005, over 1 in 4 drives end up running through the fairway. Even balls played from the right side of the fairway, assuming they have a clear view away from the branches, are hit toward the water, not a shot you want on the last hole, no matter what the stakes. The combination of the uncomfortable drive, the need to play from the center or left of the fairway, the longer approaches due to players frequently clubbing down off the tee, and a two-tiered putting surface set directly against the lake make the 18th one of the most difficult greens to hit in regulation. In the same time period since 2005, just 45% of the field has made it on safely in 2 shots. And it used to be far more challenging than it is today. When the course opened, it had just a single line of irrigation down the center of the fairway, so water only reached out to the beginning of the rough. Beyond that, the rough was an unkept salad of long and unruly grass, full of common Bermuda, Bahia, and centipede varieties. Players who hit into it could only hack out. The fairway was also much narrower than it is today. An oak tree that fell down several years after the first tournament once hung over the right side, choking off the approach angle even more. And the small pot bunker that's now short right was originally pushed up against the edge of the green, a hated and often visited grave for balls trying to avoid the lake. After the second year of the Players, a group of the most prominent professionals, including Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Weiskopf, and Craig Stadler, signed a petition demanding Beeman and the tour modify the course. They never liked that they had no say in the design of what was supposed to be a course built specifically for them. The group walked the course together in 1983 and made suggestions for the changes they'd like to see made. What followed was the first of many major alterations to the TPC that have taken place over the decades, beginning with the softening of the contours on most of the greens and the paring back of the unforgiving roughs. On 18, the fairway was widened, the green modified, and the pot bunker relocated. Long gone is the wild, woolly nature of the original course, most of the formal stadium seating, as well as much of the original personality and intimidation factor. Through remodel after remodel, the stadium course has become a garden of manicured grass, perfect lies, and state-of-the-art drainage and subsurface technology. Pete Dye once quipped that he actually had 90 holes at Sawgrass because he had rebuilt them so often. Yet for all the modifications, the 18th hole is still one of the most agonizing on the PGA Tour. In terms of scoring, it's annually the first or second most difficult hole on the course, and for the last 20 years has been one of the 10 toughest finishing holes on the schedule in all but 2 seasons. And that includes Augusta National's 18th and all the other major championship venues as well. Along the way, it's been the stage for some highly memorable finishes. During the second tournament held on the course, overnight leader John Cook came to the final hole with a share of the lead. He hooked his ball in the lake and took double, giving Hal Sutton his second tour victory. Sutton has won twice, of course, in 1983 and again in 2000. We all remember how he held off Tiger Woods on the 18th hole when he stuck his famous 6-iron approach.
Be the right club. Be the right club today. Yes!
Be the right club today, he said as his ball hung in the air before landing 10 feet from the hole. Though he bogeyed 18, Woods redeemed himself the following year, outlasting Vijay Singh by a stroke. In 2015, Ricky Fowler birdied 18 in the final round to cap off an eagle birdie-birdie finish to catch Sergio Garcia and Kevin Kisner, who he then beat in a playoff. One of the most bizarre finishes happened in 2002. Relatively unknown New Zealander Craig Perks bogeyed the 14th and 15th holes and found himself a shot back before he chipped in for eagle on the 16th and sank a 28-foot birdie putt on 17.
Good speed, that's very good speed. Look at this!
Suddenly 2 shots in the clear, he drove through the fairway on 18 and was forced to chip out. His third shot sailed over the green, where he was short-sighted in the deep rough, from where a double bogey was possible if he couldn't keep his next pitch on the upper level where the hole was. He did better than that and chipped in for par to claim his one and only PGA Tour win.
Well, that's beautiful. And that is going to put it away!
The saying goes that nature abhors a straight line, and so do most golf course architects. Pete Dye didn't. He used lines and planes in a way that no other golf course designer has. The lines he set up had aesthetic and strategic purposes and stimulate both professional golfers and regular golfers from around the world who come to play the stadium course at TPC Sawgrass. Far from clashing with nature, his design lines somehow heighten it at a site like Ponte Vedra, pulling your gaze in for a closer, longer look. When you stand on the 18th tee, you want to focus on the fairway and a safe place to drive the ball. but your attention is incapable of not following the low line of the lake, its sharp edge, and the strange angle of the water. If you do notice this, Pete Dye has got you. His lines have worked. Thanks for watching. If there's another hole you'd like to see us break down, please let us know in the comments below.